Is Matheus Cunha pushing for a move to the Arsenal? What's a reasonable fee to pay for the Brazilian? We'll do the compulsory January transfer talk and preview Wednesday night's game in N5 versus Dinamo Zagreb. All of that and more to come on this episode of the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast. But first, a quick message from our partners. This video is brought to you by Stocks FC. Stocks FC is the football stock market where you can buy stocks in your favorite players and earn cash rewards based on their real-life performances. To get you started, they're giving away 5 free stocks to every user that signs up this month, offering you the chance to familiarize yourself with the platform. Buy stocks in young players you fancy to prove themselves and watch their stocks rise, or invest in those you see as solid performers who will maintain their value. Earn weekly dividend payments every time your players score goals, make assists and play key passes. Your free loan stocks are eligible for payouts for a month, so why not give it a go? To claim your 5 free loan stocks and begin your journey, scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description. I'll be taking you along on my journey throughout our upcoming videos. Join me on the ride, Stocks FC. Hey everybody, how's it going? Happy Wednesday. Welcome back to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast with me, your host, Harry Symeou. We've got a fair bit to get into today. We're going to combine a preview show with a kind of transfer show as well, seeing as it's January. And as I said right at the top, you got to do that compulsory transfer talk during every single episode this month, haven't you? Because that's what people want. I mean, I personally am a little bit sick of it. I'm a little bit fed up of it. I always get to this stage, the longer the window goes on. At the beginning, it's quite exciting. It's like, well, who will we move for? Who could we sign? How could we improve the side? And I actually find it quite enjoyable sitting down and trying to come up with potential transfer targets or thinking about how certain players who have been linked would fit in and where they would fit in. All of it is really, really fun at the beginning. And then it gets to this stage. And I'm now bored of it, fed up of it. I'm glad there's a game tonight because it means that we can focus on some actual football. I'm glad we've got some positive news from the boss as well with regards to the fitness of some of our players. So, yeah, let's go out there tonight. Let's get back to winning ways. Let's put the 3 points on the board that would possibly secure us a place in the top 8 going into the final round of Champions League fixtures, which, by the way, isn't bad when you consider this is supposed to be, and remember, a disaster season. So when you put it that way, getting through in the Champions League with some room to spare, which could be the case by the end of tonight, it's a positive. It's something to be quite sort of proud of, I think. And when you look at how some of the other clubs, some of the other big Champions League clubs around whom there's great expectation are struggling, it goes to show that this format isn't easy. It's very demanding. There's a lot of games, etc., etc. And you combine that with the schedule that we've had as well. Actually, I think we've navigated it all quite well. We're going to get into the transfer stuff, as I say, a little bit later on. But I do want to start by previewing the game between ourselves and Dinamo Zagreb. And if you're looking for a sort of comprehensive preview and breakdown, obviously we're going to bring you one here. But I would recommend this from the Arsenal website, where they seem to have, they've been putting together some content over the course of the last few days building up to this game. But what they've done here is they've just put it all into one piece, which I think is really, really helpful. Champions League football, of course, returns to the Emirates for the first time in 2025. And Dinamo Zagreb are in town. And a win could, that's the key word, could see us book our spot in the last 16. 3 points would take us up to 16 and could mathematically secure us a bye through to that next stage. Now, that is, of course, dependent on other results as well. Our home form in the competition has been solid. No side has won more home Champions League matches than our 7, while no one has kept more than our 7 clean sheets. So it's looking pretty good at the moment. Dinamo not in the greatest shape going into this game. They've won the last 7 league titles, but they have an uphill task to try and make that 8 in 2025. They're on their 3rd manager of the campaign, and I love the way this is put, languish in 3rd spot in the top flight, 7 points off the lead, having won just 1 of their last 6 matches. For them to be in 3rd is a massive disaster given their standards. So that's why it's put as languishing in third, which to me, just in my head, doesn't really compute, doesn't really make sense. Obviously, Fabio Cannavaro is their manager, Italian football legend, one of the greatest defenders I've ever seen. Fantastic footballer, but can he turn Dinamo Zagreb around as a manager? He was appointed last month to try and do that and to try and secure a passage into the knockout stages of the Champions League. They suffered a humiliating record 9-2 loss against Bayern Munich in their opening match. That cost Sergei Yakirovich his job, and Nenad Bjelica took over. He struggled domestically, but he managed to get some strong performances out of his side in Europe. They're heading into this match week clinging on to 24th and the final qualifying spot in the table. They've got 8 points to their name. So they're no mugs. 8 points in this Champions League, when you consider the sort of quality of opposition, is not by any stretch of the imagination something to be sniffed at. And this is why I've become a little bit frustrated, actually, over the last sort of few days when I've heard people talking about this game as if it's a completely damp squib. Like, there's nothing riding on this. There's no jeopardy whatsoever. Arsenal should go out there and put 5, 6, 7, and 8 past them. I've heard some people talking about Dinamo Zagreb, I think, in really, really disrespectful terms. I just don't think that you can afford to take anybody who's in Europe's premier competition, especially with a chance of still progressing, by the way, lightly. I just don't think you can do that. I think you have to pay them respect. And I think you're going to see that when I share with you guys the team that I've picked. You're going to see that I'm paying Dinamo Zagreb the respect that I think they deserve. William Saliba, in terms of the team news, is out. Of course, he sat out Saturday's 2-2 draw with Aston Villa, had a hamstring problem. Calafiori, who's missed the last 3 games, continues to be monitored according to the club's website, but it looks like he and Ethan Nwaneri will be back in contention for this one. Are they good enough to start the game? Fit enough, I should say. Are they good enough? Of course, they're good enough. Are they fit enough to start the game? I would argue that's maybe a little bit of a stretch too far, given that they've been out for a few weeks now, but they're likely to be back in the picture. Reigning Croatian Footballer of the Year, Bruno Petkovic, has missed both of Dinamo's recent games because of a groin problem and won't be available to lead the attack. So that's a big blow for them. However, promising defensive midfielder Petar Sucic, who recently broke into the national side, has also sat out those games. Defenders Sadeg Moharami and Mauro Perkovic weren't registered for this stage of the competition due to injury, and despite being fit again, they're ineligible, as are recent signings Niko Galasic and Bartol Francic. So Dinamo Zagreb have got plenty of problems of their own as well. If you look at some of the match facts and stats going into this game, we've won our last 2 Champions League matches by 3 or more goals. We've never done so in 3 European Cup games in a row, while in major European competitions, we've only done this once in 4 games in a row in the 2020-21 Europa League. No Croatian team has ever won away from home against an English side in the European Cup or Champions League, with all 4 of those previous attempts being by Dinamo Zagreb. In 9 major European away matches in England, Dinamo have only won once, beating West Ham 1-0 in the Europa League back in December 2021. In terms of away goals, though, they have got quite the threat in Sandro Kulinovic. He's got 3 goals on the road in this season's Champions League. Only Borussia Dortmund's Jamie Gittens has scored more away Champions League goals this season than Kulinovic, who we expect to line up against us, of course, tonight. So, yeah, going to be an interesting game, I think. Going to be a lot more difficult than maybe some people would have you believe. And as a result of that, and as a consequence of my feeling around this match, and look, Arsenal aren't at their best at the minute, right? It's fair to say. We've had a grueling run of games, really crap schedule, games every sort of 2-3 days at Emirates Stadium. I think the crowd, I know this sounds stupid, but it feels like the crowd are feeling a bit of burnout as well, experiencing a bit of burnout. I joked the other day that I'd been here or been at the Emirates more than I'd been at home over the last sort of 3-4 weeks. And that certainly feels like it's the case. And, we've been talking a lot about people leaving early and people maybe not turning up. I know there's a lot of tickets available for this Dinamo Zagreb game. Even still, I obviously work at a lot of the games. And when I work at the games, I end up either passing my season ticket on to one of my brothers, or if they can't make it, then I put it on the ticket exchange, and essentially sell it back to the club, right? That allows me to then bank some money up over the course of the season from those ticket sales. And when it comes to my season ticket renewal, I've got that little bit there just to help me with it, because as I say, I'm essentially paying for something that I'm not at the moment using a great deal, right? So that's what I've been doing. Either handing it over or putting it on the ticket exchange. Now, normally when I put it on the ticket exchange for, like, let's say a Premier League game, it gets snapped up within minutes. The minute I put it on, I get an email back from the club saying your ticket has been listed on the exchange. And within half an hour, I'm going to get another email saying that your ticket's been sold and X amount has been credited to your account. I put this Dinamo Zagreb ticket up 2 days ago, probably Monday morning, I think I put it up, and it only sold last night. Now, that's fine, right? It's not an issue. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's clearly a bit of burnout within the fan base right now. There's clearly a lot of people that feel like this is maybe one game too much over the course of these last 3-4 weeks, and would prefer not to go, would prefer to put their tickets on the exchange. And unfortunately for us, so far, the uptake hasn't been as good as we thought it might be. Where I do get a little bit frustrated by all of this stuff is that I often speak to Arsenal fans who say, I can't get a ticket. For love nor money, I can't get a ticket. And I understand that Dinamo Zagreb at home, when we're on course to qualify, isn't exactly the most glamorous fixture. I do get that, right? And I also understand that because it's a Champions League game, the price reflects that of a game that's probably going to be held in higher esteem by other people, right? So I get all of those factors. I understand it. I understand it's midweek. I get all of that. But the amount of people that come to me on a regular basis and say, Harry, I can't get an Arsenal ticket for love nor money. How do I get one? Who have an opportunity now to get a ticket and don't want it. I can't comprehend that. Like, I remember when I was a kid or much younger, before I was a season ticket holder, before I was able to go to every home game. And I remember, like, there was plenty of opportunities where maybe less desirable games would come up, especially League Cup games, for instance. And sort of I'd snap it up. Like, whatever the game was, I didn't care. I just wanted to be there. So I personally find that a little bit difficult to understand. But John does make the point. It's midweek. And as you say, it's expensive. I get what you're saying, though. Yeah, I understand that there'll be a lot of people that will look at that and go, well, would I push the boat out that little bit further to make sure that I'm in the stadium for this game? Like, if someone says to you, here's a ticket for the North London derby, but it's a bit more expensive than you'd have liked to pay, you're probably more inclined to go, whatever, let's do it. You're probably more inclined to go, yeah, let's go. I'll worry about it later, whereas in a game like this, you probably don't feel that way. And I understand that. I get it. I just find it a little bit difficult. Like, especially, I find it quite difficult within some of my friendship groups, because I'm constantly getting asked, like, can you get me a ticket? Can you get me a ticket? Can you get me a ticket? And before I put it on the exchange, I often say in the group, like, does anyone want the ticket? And like, nobody bites. But in a week's time, those same people will be saying, I can't get a ticket. It's so frustrating. I can't get into any game. I'd go to any game. I just can't get there. Can't get in. So that's where I get a little bit frustrated. Maybe it's like a personal thing that maybe I'm sort of generalizing the fan base with as a result of sort of my own experience. But yeah, I do find that a little bit frustrating. Okay, let's talk about the lineup to face Dinamo Zagreb tonight. I've seen a few lineups going around online. I've seen a lot of people going really, really weak, actually, with their team selection. And I got to be honest, guys, I don't really want to see that. I want to see us get the job done in the Champions League. Let's do what's necessary to try and book our place in the top 8. And if we manage to do that, then next week when we play Girona, you can rotate all you like. Also, add to the equation, we don't really have that many players to rotate at the moment because of the injury problems we have. So I've gone a little bit left field in some departments, but I think I've gone pretty standard in others. So let's start with the defense. Raya in goal for me. Partey would continue at right back. I know that's going to go down like a lead balloon with some of you, but I'd continue with Partey at right back. I'm going Timber and Gabriel at centre back, and I'm going Miles Lewis-Skelly at left back. I know some people have suggested that, if Calafiori's back, he should play at left back. And I know others have suggested that he could maybe replace Gabriel, or that Jakub Kiwior should come in to replace Gabriel. Personally, in a Champions League game, I am not going to take Gabriel out in the absence of Saliba. I don't think you can rest them both. I think it's one or the other. And at the minute, with William Saliba unavailable, Mikel Arteta said yesterday that this game has come around a little bit too soon for him. I think that you have to keep Gabriel in there for me. So that's my backline: Partey, Timber, Gabriel, and Miles Lewis-Skelly. In the midfield, I'm going with Rice as the anchor. I'm going with Mikel Merino, and I'm going with Martin Odegaard. Now, there was a temptation on my part here to say, don't play Martin Odegaard. Wrap him up in cotton wool. He's too important. Maybe he's playing too much football at the moment. Maybe that is a contributing factor to the drop-off in his performance levels, which I think we can all, if we're being honest, see. But at the same time, there's a part of me that feels like actually the best way through this might be for him to play through it, right? It might be for him to keep playing, to have a good night against a club like Dinamo Zagreb, where he's probably going to get a little bit more space and a little bit more room. And if he can get among the goals, if he can put in the type of display that we know he's capable of, then maybe that sees Martin Odegaard return to the level that we're all expecting from him on a sort of weekly basis. So midfield for me, Rice, Merino, and Odegaard. My front line has been rejigged a little bit. I'd start Raheem Sterling. I know that I've talked a lot recently about him not cutting it, not living up to the billing, not being the signing that we all hoped that he would be. But I'm going to play Sterling on one flank. I'm going to play Martinelli on the other. And I'm going to put Leandro Trossard in the false nine position, because he seems to have rediscovered a little bit of form, Leandro Trossard. And I also feel like Kai Havertz could do with a breather. I know he missed a couple of games through illness and all the rest of it, but I just think he's another one who we've overworked massively in recent weeks. And listen, look, we keep talking about injuries, and we keep talking about the squad and the fact that it's on its knees. And I repeatedly make the point that, it's not just about who starts the game, right? Like, I've got 3 players to the side of my team sheet, for those of you that are watching on YouTube. And I've got Calafiori there, who I want to play some part if he's available to, right? So that means that Miles Lewis-Skelly or Gabriel might not need to play the full 90 minutes. I've got Ethan Nwaneri there, who I'd like to see come on at some point. Maybe ideally for Martinelli on that right-hand side. Therefore, if we're in the position to do so, we don't have to use Martinelli for the entire 90 minutes. And if you want to bring Kai Havertz on for half an hour, that is absolutely fine. That is very, 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 very different to him playing an entire 90. So, yeah, that's how I look at it. So that's my 11: Raya, Partey, Timber, Gabriel, and Miles Lewis-Skelly. And then I've gone Rice, Odegaard, and Merino in midfield. And then I've gone Martinelli, Trossard, and Sterling. That's my team. Let me know your thoughts in the live chat. I can see there are some coming through. Right. Let's move on, shall we? Let's go on to how we think this one might go, and some of your comments around this particular fixture. Okay, let's see what you guys are saying. RM says, Harry, you're leaving out the club's top scorer in a must-win game. Yes, he deserves a break. He needs a break. Of course he does. So, yeah, I would leave him out, because I think, as I've said, he could do with the rest. He really could. Cass says, what happened with Zinchenko? Is he injured? Why not play him or Tierney at left back? You could, but I just, like, for me, Kieran Tierney's got no future at Arsenal. I think he's going to join Celtic. If not this month, then definitely in the summer. And I feel like we're in a similar position with Zinchenko, where I just don't think he has much of a future at the football club anymore. So why not take the opportunity to give Miles Lewis-Skelly another UEFA Champions League experience and better equip him for the future? Why not do that? As long as he's okay physically, and obviously with Calafiori returning, that takes some of the burden off of him in the coming weeks, then why not? Why not use him, and why not use players and give players the minutes that we're going to want to develop further and push on in the future? Playing those two guys, I mean, yeah, they'd be handy for now if we're sort of desperate and up shit street, but outside of that, I don't really see the benefit of it, to be honest with you. Richie suggests playing Calafiori at centre back. I did mention that is a possibility, but for me, for me, it's a bit of a risk to throw someone in who's been out for 3 weeks now. I probably wouldn't just throw him into the 11. I'd go into the game with the mindset of let's get him some minutes and let's get him on the pitch at some point. But I don't know that I'd start him at centre back. As I say, it's partly because of that, but it's also partly because I just think in the absence of William Saliba, Gabriel has to play. And if Gabriel plays, he plays in his position, which is left centre back. Therefore, where does Calafiori fit into that? Mikel Arteta spoke yesterday, didn't he, about the fact that he doesn't like sort of right-sided players playing at, left-sided players playing at right centre-back. Now, I know sometimes you get desperate and you've got no choice, but it's not his preference, which makes me think he's probably not going to do that. Okay, let's move on. Prediction time. What is my prediction? I'm going to go Arsenal 3, Dinamo Zagreb 0. I think we'll grab control of the game. I think we'll be in a good position. And then I think you'll see the game sort of phase out. And you'll see Arsenal sort of wind it down a little bit, bring some substitutes on, protect some players ahead of that trip to Molineux at the weekend. So my prediction is Arsenal 3, Dinamo Zagreb 0. Right then, shall we do some of that transfer chat that you're all desperate for? I can see. If you haven't done so already, please do leave a like on the video, guys. It really, really does help. Subscribe to the channel if you're new, as well as we continue on YouTube on our journey towards 40,000. We crossed the 38K mark not that long ago. Let's keep pushing. Let's keep moving forward. If you're listening to us on the audio platforms, please be subscribed and leave us a review, because that also really, really does help. If you are with us currently on X, then I'd encourage you to come over to the Chronicles of a Gooner podcast feed or YouTube channel. If you enjoy the live element, come over to the YouTube channel. If you enjoy listening back, then please subscribe to the podcast. And the reason I say that, if you want to enjoy it on X, that's fine. But we're not going to stream every single episode to X, so you're going to miss out on a fair bit if you don't come over and subscribe on one of those other platforms. Leave the likes, subscriptions, all the rest of it. And if you want to go one further and support us on Patreon, you can do so. The next Patreon piece will be out late tonight after the conclusion of Arsenal versus Dinamo Zagreb, where we'll bring you some instant reaction. So yeah, looking forward to that. Looking forward to hopefully discussing a victory. Right, shall we talk transfers then? Shall we talk Matheus Cunha? Because there's a lot of talk around him, and that talk appears to have intensified over the last, 24 hours? Okay, so on yesterday's episode, we talked about Matheus Cunha at length. We talked about the fact that I quite like the player, that I think profile-wise, he'd be a pretty good fit, that I like the fact that he can play anywhere across the front line. He can play through the middle. He can play on the right. He can play on the left. He can drop into a slightly deeper pocket as well. I think he's got all of that going for him, Matheus Cunha. My issue with Matheus Cunha has always been the price point, right? The price point is a joke. The price point is ridiculous. If we're to believe the reports that were doing the rounds yesterday, we heard some suggesting that Wolves were going to hold out for £80 million. That is bonkers. That is bonkers. So, you can forgive me for thinking, no deal to be done, walk away. And I still feel that. I still feel like if Wolves are going to take the pee out of us, which they're entitled to do because Matheus Cunha is their player, then this isn't a deal that if I were Arsenal Football Club, I would pursue. The problem here, guys, is this, or I say problem. What's changed over the last 24 hours, I should say, is this. It seems as though, and remember we were questioning this on yesterday's episode. I said to you guys, right, Matheus Cunha, all we kept hearing was he's going to sign a new contract at Wolves. But there's been no confirmation of that. There's been nothing to say that is done or close to being done. And that has then developed into people saying, well, if he hasn't signed the new contract, maybe an exit is on the cards. And that has developed further into reports yesterday claiming that the reason that Matheus Cunha has not signed that new deal with Wolverhampton Wanderers is because there is interest from other clubs and he now wants to leave. He is pushing for an exit and he's pushing specifically for a move to Arsenal. Now, I don't know how reliable those reports are. I don't know how serious those reports are. I'm not going to sit and comment on the accuracy of those reports because the truth is, guys, I do not know. But it does kind of make sense that given he was supposedly on the verge of signing a new contract and something has obviously stopped that from happening, you start to think, don't you? You start to think, well, maybe there is something going on in the background. But let's be clear. Arsenal, as per the reports, are not the only club with an interest in Matheus Cunha. And that's important to note because what normally happens is you hear of Arsenal's interest in a player. Everybody assumes that they've got a free run at them. And once people hear that, or anything other than getting the deal done is seen as a complete and utter failure. But Fabrizio Romano has claimed that there are 4 clubs in the run for Matheus Cunha. 4 clubs are interested and are ready to battle it out for his signature during this window. I read last night that Nottingham Forest are one of them. Now, I'm not for a second suggesting that if we go into battle with Nottingham Forest, they beat us. They shouldn't, not financially, not reputationally, not in terms of their pool. It shouldn't happen. But Forest are looking to consolidate what's been a really good first half of the season for themselves. And they're looking to push on and try and get into those Champions League spots come the end of the season. That seemed impossible at the start of the campaign, but it feels like a possibility now for Nuno Espirito Santo's side. And I know from what he's done in Greek football that Evangelos Marinakis is a very, very ambitious owner and will push the boat out if he feels that that's the kind of deal that can get his team over the line. Add Edu into the equation, Brazilian. Matheus Cunha might not be working officially just yet, Edu, but I'm sure he can have some informal conversations. And all of a sudden, they're a threat to us. They're a threat to us in the transfer market because of a couple of reasons, right? As I say, financially, they shouldn't be able to beat us. Reputationally, they shouldn't be able to beat us. But it's the role that they can offer to the player as well that I think is really interesting. If Arsenal are going to bring him in and he's going to play second fiddle to Kai Havertz and start 1 every 3 games, or be a Leandro Trossard mold player where he's coming in and out of the team and there's no real consistency to his selection, that might not necessarily appeal to Matheus Cunha. Now, me personally, I'd rather play for Arsenal than Nottingham Forest. I'd rather be a Leandro Trossard sort of level squad member than be the main man at Nottingham Forest, because I think you're going to play for bigger and better things. At Arsenal, it's a much bigger club. You're obviously going to earn a hell of a lot more money as well, and it just feels like that's the right move. But we don't have a free run at this player. There are other clubs in the mix. Chelsea have been linked as well. I've seen a couple of clubs on the continent being linked too. So it's not a given that he is going to leave Wolves for Arsenal in this window. We haven't heard of Arsenal making an official offer. We haven't heard of Arsenal having a concrete interest necessarily. Like, we're hearing rumors and mumbles and murmurs. And I'm always very, very reluctant to fall into these traps when it comes to a transfer window, because it could quite easily be a case of, Matheus Cunha is not signing any deal and Arsenal need a forward, so let's just make that link. Like, how strong is the link? Like, how concrete is this connection being made between Arsenal and Matheus Cunha? We're going to have to wait and see. I guess after my rant yesterday, I suppose you're going to want me to explain what I think is a fair and reasonable price then for the forward. Because, as I said yesterday, my point was never about Matheus Cunha, the player. It was never, Matheus Cunha is rubbish, or Matheus Cunha is not good enough, or anything like that. That was never my sort of angle on the Brazilian. My angle was always that For £80 million, no. No, thank you. Not having that. Not having it at all. And so, you then start to think, okay, well, I'm sitting here and I'm going massive and I'm saying, no, this is too much. I don't want to pay for this guy. I don't want to pay that kind of price. It's ridiculous. But then you've got to give or suggest the solution, right? You've got to suggest a price point that you do deem fair and reasonable. So I've been thinking a lot about this. For me, 50 million is top whack. That is the absolute top whack that I'd be willing to pay for Matheus Cunha. Not a penny more. Not 51, not 52, not 53. 50 million is my absolute ceiling. Would I go into the negotiation offering 50 million from the outset? Absolutely not, because I know that they're going to want to negotiate. I know that they're going to push back, and I know that that's going to see an inflation in the price point. But 50 million is what I would have in my head as Arsenal Football Club going into this deal. And I don't think I would budge on that. Like, to the point where I think going above that would be so ridiculous and so irresponsible when you consider that we've got supposedly big plans in place for the summer. It would be so irresponsible that I would rather we just walked away and didn't sign anyone. And I know that's going to go down like a lead balloon. I know people are going to be annoyed with that. Richard Jones asks the question, how much would you have paid for Havertz, Harry? I said at the time, 45, 50 at the top whack again. And so, yep, by my sort of logic and by my thinking, we overpaid for Kai Havertz. But the reason I could understand why we did that a little bit more, and I'm still not saying it was right. I still stick by, we paid too much money, for Kai Havertz. But the reason I was more open to that possibility or open to having to do that was because we were signing from Chelsea. We were signing from a rival. Wolves are not at that same level. Wolves are not in the same stratosphere as Chelsea as a football club. And so, for me, they can't demand the same type of money. Like, that's where I'm at on that. Matt Dyer says, didn't Wolves pay 50 million for Cunha? Let's have a look at how much they paid to bring him in. They paid 50 million euros. But look, they've got a few years of service out of him. Like, they've got like nearly 2 years of service out of him. But the other thing to factor in here, guys, is that he won't sign this new contract. And if he won't sign the new contract, with 2 years remaining on it, his value is going to decrease from month to month from here on in. So you're almost at a point where you kind of, if you're them, you need to cash in and you need to get the deal done now before you end up with a player whose value is just dropping like a stone. And it will, because he's the wrong side of 25. His contract runs out in a couple of years. Once you get into the final year of the contract, so if they were to hold on until that point, then obviously that really does hit the value as well. But look, in terms of Matheus Cunha and, some of the concerns that I've read in the live chat, there was a point made earlier by AJ who says, my doubt on Cunha is how prolific he is, how much of a level raiser he is. If he does play on the wings, does he have that explosive pace we can use to exploit teams? I question the profile. I always think that when Matheus Cunha plays wide, he's more like an inside forward or a wide forward that will drift inside and will get involved. He's not an out-and-out winger. That's clear. Like, I know if you look at his profile, for instance, on Transfer Market, I'll just share that with you guys now. You can see that he's he's noted down as being able to play centre forward, right wing, left wing. But I think his version of playing on the wing is not the same as when Martinelli plays it or when Saka plays it, for example. He's probably not as wide in terms of his starting position, and he's probably going to be a little bit closer to the centre forward. But on the point of him maybe not being as prolific as people want, 10 goals in 21 Premier League appearances this season and 4 assists. So 14 direct goal contributions in 21 games. In this league, for a team struggling like Wolves, it's pretty good going. Like, I don't really know what more you could ask from him, to be honest with you. Like, I think, I know we're looking for this bar raiser and stuff, and that's fair and understandable, and I totally get that. But I mean, I don't really know what you could ask from him more in terms of his outputs. His outputs, I think, this season have been really, really good. Have they always been that good? No. And that's why there's a lot of interest around him at the moment. That's why he's kind of one of the hottest properties in the Premier League. But how much value and emphasis do you place on that whole Premier League proven thing? I know a lot of people like to talk about that. Does the fact that this record is in the Premier League, does that give you more confidence in the idea of paying a little bit more than we'd like for Matheus Cunha because you know he can deliver it on this stage? Maybe it does. Maybe it does. But hey, those are my thoughts on the Matheus Cunha links. As I say, I don't know that he's pushing for Arsenal. That's what some of the reports are suggesting at this moment in time. I don't know that Arsenal would be able to make it work financially. I have no idea how much would get the deal done, but I do know that I would not be willing to go into that sort of bracket of 70, 80 million pounds, which was being talked about yesterday. That is absolutely wild. 50 million is my ceiling. Raj says, the options are simple. A, you pay inflated prices in January, or B, you allow players' contracts to run down and get better value in the summer. There's lots of players out of contract too. Yeah, but I think, Raj, at the moment, the frustration, and I get that, it's always better to do business in the summer. I think we all agree on that. But I think people are just at a point now where they're really frustrated by what they're seeing from week to week. And so as a result of that, they're kind of desperate to see the club go and push the boat out and do that little bit extra to get a deal done. Even if it costs a little bit of money. There was a comment in yesterday's episode, I think, in the comment section, where someone said, why do you care about how much Arsenal spend? It's not your money. Well, the reason I care about how much Arsenal spend is because then it's going to be a problem down the line, right? Then you get to a situation where you have a need that you cannot satisfy and a problem that you cannot address because you've overpaid for someone that you should never have overpaid for. So that's why I care. It isn't my money. It doesn't come out of my pocket. I don't sign the check. It doesn't come out of my bank account or anything like that. Of course it doesn't. But this idea that you should just not give a shit and essentially encourage your team and your club to spend frivolously when there's so many restrictions in place at the moment that can land you in hot water, as many clubs have found. And also, if you know that your ownership operate in a certain way, which ours do, you know that if you go big and overspend on someone, you're probably going to have to scale back at some point, right? So if you go back to not the summer just gone, the one previously, you think about how big we went in terms of what we spent. Look what happened the following summer. We made a number of sales to office that we did. And actually, Arsenal didn't really spend a great deal of money last summer. And people are here bemoaning that fact and complaining about that fact and saying, well, we didn't do enough. We weren't ambitious enough. That's why we're in the situation that we're in today. Well, that could be valid and fair, right? If that's your analysis of the situation, who am I to tell you that it's wrong? What I will tell you is that business and that activity last summer was a consequence of us going really big in the couple of summers prior. So if you think that spending mega money doesn't have a knock-on effect and doesn't have an impact, you are wrong. It does. Might not come out of your pocket or my pocket, but it does have an impact on how the club operates moving forward. That's why I care about how much we pay for players like this. That's why I care. Okay. I think that's pretty much it from me on Matheus Cunha. If anyone's got any questions, chuck them in. I'd love to answer some of those and work our way through some of those. I do want to send a special shout out as well to Stephen Foote, one of our most loyal and dedicated listeners, who's currently unwell and in hospital at the moment. Stephen says, you keep me going, mate. Come on, you Gunners. Thank you so much, Stephen, for tuning in. And I'm glad that, we can help in some way. I know that, we can't make you feel well and make you stronger physically at the moment. But if we're helping you to sort of get through the days, then that's good enough for me. So wish you all the best, mate, and hope you'll be back home and fighting fit again very, very soon. All the best, and thank you as always for tuning in, mate. Really, really do appreciate it. Okay, Mod says, People forget we spent 45 million on Lacazette, got 0 back. We spent 65 million on Oba, got 0 back. Got Jesus of 45 million, basically going to get nothing back. Got nothing for Sanchez pretty much. So our forwards and our economics in that area are not great. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And listen, if it were down to me, do it. Like, go and do it. Make it happen. Go and bring in the players that you want to bring in. And if you got to pay a little bit extra, do it. So what? Who cares? But I know it's going to cost us later down the line. I know there will come a point where we're all going, we desperately need a centre midfielder, or we desperately need another forward, or we desperately need another goalkeeper. And the club will turn around and go, well, we kind of overspent in the forward department, and now we can't do that. And then you're all going to be frustrated and say, why did we pay this for X player? Why did we pay that for Y player? Like, all these things do have a knock-on effect. And we don't have a sugar daddy owner like Roman Abramovich was for Chelsea for so many years. Buy a load of players. Works out. Great. Doesn't work out. No problem. I'll buy a load more. The game has changed a lot since then. It really, really has. Nunandinho says, hi, Harry. Are we not leaving it late to secure top-tier signings when clubs will be reluctant to sell as they have less time to get a replacement? Yeah, I mean, look, often we see Arsenal do business late in windows. It's not a surprise to me necessarily. Sometimes these things take time, as we kind of explained and broke down a little bit yesterday. And also, you know, when a player, if we to believe the reports, he's pushing for an exit, often when they actually make a breakthrough is towards the end of the window. And the reason for that is because the club will get to a point where they're just like, well, this guy ain't going to do nothing for us. He ain't going to perform. His head's not here. He doesn't want to be here. This money's on the table. If we don't take it now, we're going to have 6 more months or 4 or 5 more months, depending on how long there is until the summer window opens again, where we've got this guy sitting on the bench, collecting a wage, not performing, not pulling his weight, causing disharmony in the changing room. Let's just take it. So sometimes people crack right at the end. You know, it's often a game of chicken transfer negotiations. How long will you dig your heels in? And how long can you, you know, stand your ground before you crumble? And often you will crumble because the idea of getting nothing for someone that you know isn't going to give you what you need from them, it's really, really scary. And when that time's running out, you go into panic mode. And that's when there's the most movement. That's when people are desperate to get things done on both sides. That's when breakthroughs are made, I think. What else have we got in the chat? Martin says, a question for all you guys out there. Why are you all so desperate? If we were to win the league, is it going to change your lives? If it is, then you have a problem. I'm not sure I agree with that, Martin. I think I understand why people want us to win the league, of course. Colin says, morning, Harry. If Isak was 150 million, would you prefer to sign him or Sesko and Cunha for approximately 150 million? There are some players that I just believe in. There are some players that I'm convinced are the answer. And there are some players that you will not catch me sitting on a podcast telling you we shouldn't break the bank for. Alexander Isak is that player. If Newcastle said 150 million and we have the means to pay, I would do it. I would absolutely do it. Sesko and Cunha, you know, for lower fees and as a combination could be a decent alternative. But Alexander Isak is the one for me. Like, if we're talking about an overinflated price for him, I'm okay with that. I'm not okay with it, but I'm more open to taking that risk. I'm not open to taking that risk with players that I don't rate as highly and I don't regard as highly. So yeah, Isak would be the one for me. He's the one bank breaking signing that I would make, where there would be essentially very high limits to what I'd be willing to do or pay. Okay, then. I think we are going to leave it there. Just before I sign out, I want to bring you guys up to speed and remind you guys that this podcast is brought to you currently by the good people over at Stocks FC. You can buy stocks in your favorite players and watch them rise or fall if you don't play it right in terms of their value. You can also earn weekly dividends, which are earned via the points that these players score based on their performances in real life. So it's good fun. It's great fun. If you take my approach, which is invest when their stocks are low and hope that they're going to rise, that's one way to do it. Or you can invest in sure things and believe that you're going to earn from those players on a weekly basis and build your portfolio value up that way. If you want to play Stocks FC, you can do so, and you can claim free loan stocks, 5 free loan stocks, by scanning the QR code in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen or clicking the link in the description. I just want to emphasize, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, okay? This is a bit of fun that you stand to earn some money from if you play it right. But if you can't afford it, do not play it. I'm not trying to get anybody into hot water financially. I'm enjoying it. I'm having a lot of fun with it. I've experienced some ups and I've experienced some downs. And I've added a couple of new players to my portfolio this morning. I've been invested in players when their stocks have been low, hoping that they would rise. In some cases, that's been correct, and that's been the way to go. In others, it's not been so far. But I'm playing the long game here on Stocks FC. Today, I added David Raya to my portfolio because I think he is a sure thing. I think he's been super consistent in his performances, and I look forward to his stock rising even further as Arsenal improve over the course of what remains of the season. I've also added Greek international defender Kostas Tsimikas, who I thought had a really good game for Liverpool last night and is on the upward trajectory. Andrew Robertson not quite looking the same as he did a number of years ago. So to have Tsimikas in there, I think is smart business, and I think his value will increase over the course of time. Stocks FC, check them out. You can click the link in the description below, or you can scan the QR code if you're watching us in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen to claim your 5 free stocks and start playing now. Thank you to them for their support of the Chronicles of a Gooner. Okay, then. Thank you all so much for joining me on this Wednesday morning. Dinamo Zagreb at home tonight. Big game in terms of what it could mean for us. An opportunity to rotate a little bit, maybe, depending on how seriously you take the opposition. But let's hope for the 3 points. And maybe by the time we sit down to record the review show tomorrow, we'll have a bit more on the Matheus Cunha story, or any stories relating to anybody else that the Arsenal are looking at. Thank you so much. I'll see you all on the next episode. Until then, take care of yourselves. Have a great day. Goodbye.